computer science and programming language Java. Today we're talking about the issue of inheritance in Java, and specifically we're talking about the use of the word super in the constructor of the child class. And I'm going to use an example, some kind of a metaphor. So I have a parent class, and the parent class is plates. And this is a depiction of my parent class, all kinds of variety of plates. And this parent class has a few instance variables. It has a variable that is discussing its material, some string variable, which material it is made of. Is it glass, is it porcelain, or whatever, or wood, or what is the material? It has another instance variable, which is the width of the plate in centimeters or in inches. It depends where you are in the world. And it has another instance variable, which is a Boolean variable, and it asks if the plate is transparent or not. So this is the parent class, and it has also a child class. The child class is a plate that is heart-shaped. And since this child class uses the word extends in its signature, and it inherits all of the instance variables of the parent, it's supposed to have all of the instance variable its parent has. It gets it by inheritance. But in addition, this child class has also an instance variable that is specific to the child class, and this specific variable is the color of the heart. And this is a variable, a string of type string, and it is called the heart color. Okay, so now when I am writing the code for the child class, this heart-shaped plate, when I'm writing the code for its constructor, I should remember that this is first and foremost a plate. It also has the shape of a heart, but first of all, it's a plate. So in the constructor, first of all, I'm supposed to call in the first line of the constructor, the first line in the squiggly parentheses, I should use the word super to call some constructor of the parent, because I need, first of all, to make sure that all of the instance variable of the parent, such as the width and what material it is and is it transparent, that it will be also shown in the object of the child, because this is first and foremost, it's also a plate. So I'm using the word super, and the word super, it has like this same usage that we used to do with the word this. You remember when we used to say this each time we wanted to refer to the object we're currently in, or currently we're in some current object, and we use the word this. So the word super, it has kind of the same usage, but this time it's not talking about the current object, but actually it refers to the parent object. So what I'm doing is I'm using the word super, and then I'm calling, using that word, some constructor of the parent. Why am I saying some constructor? Because we know that sometimes classes has more than one constructor. We saw it that we have classes that have many constructors: a copy constructor, a default constructor, a constructor that receives as parameter a string, a constructor that receives as a parameter int, or both of them, or int and string, or string and then int. And we learned about overloading and how all of those constructors, they live together. But when we call them, we should put in the parentheses the parameters that are in congruence to that they fit the constructor that we want to use. So the same thing happens here in the child class, in the constructor. In the first line of that constructor of the child, when I'm using the word super to call some constructor of the parent, I should be aware that I'm calling a constructor using the right parameters in the parentheses that actually corresponds to some constructor that exists at the parents. And it's interesting to know that when Java, the language, the programming language, if Java notices that I forgot to put in the constructor of the child the word super and to call some constructor of the parent, it will do it for me. Behind the scenes, without me even seeing it, Java is going to plant there a sentence with the word super, and it's going to call the empty constructor with a constructor with no parameters in the parentheses. But the thing is that not always the parent has an empty constructor. I mean, the parent class here, let's say I forgot to put the word super in the constructor of the child, and Java for me puts, without even me knowing it, the first line it calls, with the word super, it calls an empty constructor of the parent class. So maybe this parent class does have an empty constructor. It will have an empty constructor if I wrote one for it. If I decide that there's going to be some default values that are going to be some values for this empty constructor. Let's say I decide that someone will call the constructor with no parameters in the parentheses, then the parent class, its default values will be the material is porcelain and the width is 30 centimeter and it's not transparent, and this is going to be the default object that is going to be created when I'm not putting anything in the parentheses, when I'm creating an object of the parent. Then I have an empty constructor for the parent. So if Java will call the empty constructor of the parent, it will be okay. But if there is no empty constructor in the parent, it will not work. And it's important to know that Java, just generally, not even related to inheritance, when Java looks at some class, if the language sees that there is no constructor in it, if I forgot to write a constructor in some class, whatever class it is, doesn't matter if it is inheritance, it doesn't have anything with inheritance. If Java sees that I made a class and it has no constructor, Java will make one for me for free without even telling me. Silently, it will create an empty constructor that initiates all of the variables to 0 or to false or to null, depending on the type of the variable. But Java will do that only if I made no constructor by my own. That means that if I did make some kind of constructor in some class, then Java will not give me that default constructor that initiates everything to 0 and to false and to null. So as you can see, there may be times that the parent class does have an empty constructor, and there may be times that it does not have an empty constructor. And this is why if I forget to call in the child constructor in the first line, I forget to call a constructor of the parent using the word super, and Java inserts in it, without my knowledge, a call to the empty constructor of the parent, which this is what it does if I don't put the word super in the first line of the constructor, then it will work and it will be fine if the parent class has some empty constructor, but it will not work if the parent class does not have an empty constructor. And this is all about the super word in inheritance of Java programming language. Thank you for listening.